There is a new film adaptation of The Crow that is hitting theaters this weekend, and I have a lot to say about this one because this movie just flat out stinks. The Crow is directed by Rupert Sanders, who had directed Snow White and the Huntsman and the Ghost in the Shell remake, as it stars Bill Skarsgård and FKA Twigs in the lead roles. Before checking out this film, I was very hesitant on being excited for it, as the trailers for this film looked really bad, especially with the character design of Eric Draven / The Crow. He reminded me very heavily of Jared Leto's portrayal of the Joker from the Suicide Squad film from 2016. And with the first adaptation of the comic book series, The Crow from 1994, that is such a really good movie, especially being so emotionally attached to Brandon Lee, who actually passed away while performing on set for the film. And as I was driving to check out the Thursday preview showing for this film at 7:30, there were no reviews for this film on Rotten Tomatoes, so that was a clear red flag, as the reviews are usually released a day or two before the film's release. So as the credits started, I had no idea what anybody thought of this movie, and when I walked out, it was around a 10%, and it has gone up since to around a 20. That sounds about right, because this movie was really bad. What I think this movie fails to do is to make this movie actually interesting, because this is one of the most boring movies I have seen this year. The first half of this movie is so dreadfully boring and painful to watch that I just wanted to go to bed. And I saw this at a 7:30 showtime. I was ready to go, but this movie wasn't, as this movie does feel like it has a clear direction of where it wants to go, despite the fact that this movie was in developmental hell for like years, since like 2008. And the story is very clear on what it's happening next if you have ever seen any adaptation of The Crow, but it does it in the most boring and uninteresting way possible, that it actually made this movie feel like a chore to get through, especially the action sequences in this movie that are poorly handled. And the way that it's shot looks good, like you can clearly tell what's going on. It's the fact that when these characters are fighting one another or they're using a gun and shooting somebody, everything just looks like it's in slow motion, and I didn't know what the point of it was. I just thought it looked really bad and uninteresting. Bill Skarsgård plays the lead role as Eric Draven, and I think he is a great actor. I think he was a great choice for this role, but unfortunately his performance is so bad in this movie that it was actually quite laughable. People in my auditorium actually laughing during the more dramatic and emotional scenes. And FKA Twigs, who is mostly known as a musical artist, and she has made some great music, but she is not great in this film as well, which leads me to believe that Rupert Sanders just did a bad job of directing these actors, especially with Bill Skarsgård being one of the best underrated newer actors in the past couple of years. Like, he played Pennywise from the It films, and he has done a lot of interesting and challenging roles, but in this film he has nothing to do with the screenplay being so boring and uninteresting, with a lot of really bad dialogue, and just his performance just does not hit the moments that it needs to. And I just think that criticism leads to the direction. It feels like it's trying to be this edgy and cool and bad type of movie, but it doesn't have its own visual style. And I'm not trying to compare this to the 1994 film that was a very Gotham inspired gothic type of world, which was so cool and interesting, but even like the production design of this film is not great. It just feels like it's trying to be cool and grounded in the real world, but it doesn't have its own visual style to it, and it's just very bland. Nothing felt all that dark or bad. Anything that happened, it just feels like your standard typical revenge thriller movie, and you add the IP of The Crow in it. With this film being distributed by Lionsgate, I was expecting this film to have a lot more creative freedom, because Lionsgate isn't one of the major Hollywood studios. They allow their filmmakers to have more freedom with their films, especially ones that have a $50 million budget. But this movie just doesn't do any of that. While this film is a reboot of the Crow film series and not a remake, this film film decides to do a couple of different story changes from the original film and from the original comic series, which is all cool. I'm glad that they did something different, not just a shot-for-shot remake or reboot or whatever of that 1994 film. But all of these changes feel very unnecessary and don't add all that much to the film, and none of it's bad. It's just like, why are you changing it just for the sake of it? There's no reason to make a modern day second film adaptation of The Crow when the first adaptation from 1994 still holds up today and is a way better movie than this one. While I have been complaining so much about this movie does have a few positives here, and the first one being this is better than the Crow sequels. I do feel like this movie is trying to be good because I was clearly able to tell what was going on, like in a very easy linear narrative storytelling, which I do appreciate. I do really enjoy the visual effects in this movie, as I did find them to be pretty convincing, especially during the opera scene, which looked pretty good, that you've seen in the trailers already. All of that does look convincingly real, especially when you have a $50 million budget. I do feel like a lot of the budget probably went to these action sequences, and with all the blood and gory moments that happen within these times, it does look pretty good and convincing, and it definitely was one of the better aspects about this film. The last positive I have with this movie does feel sort of sad, but it is true considering how many existing IPs that we have out there in the film adaptations and how they get screwed up so poorly, is the fact that this does feel like an adaptation of the Crow comic book series. You could look at the marketing and the trailers and the actual film itself, and you can feel like this is an adaptation of the Crow. It has everything that you would expect from a Crow film adaptation. It has all the costume and the gothic look to it, dealing with a lost loved one. I do think there's going to be some people out there that might actually enjoy this movie. It's not going to be a lot, but I do think because it has all those elements, it still feels like it's part of the Crow film series. It's just not done well. So overall, the 2024 version of The Crow is another bland, boring, and uninteresting adaptation of the Crow comic book series that fails on every level to be an interesting action-packed superhero film and does not hit those really dark themes of loss and anger and violence and revenge like the 1994 film did. And the performances in this movie are really bad, and direction is just so lifeless and uninteresting. So if this is a film that you were excited to see, then I'd say maybe check it out and see for yourself, but it seems like a lot of people are not enjoying this film. If you're someone who's watching this review and is still excited to go check out this movie, then just go watch it. I mean, I thought it was bad, like really bad, but maybe you'll get some enjoyment out of it. I am giving The Crow 2024 a 4 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. As I want to know below in the comment section, have you seen The Crow, and are you going to be checking it out this weekend? I would love to hear all about it. Before you guys check out this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like as you should, and ring that notification bell so I can see you all in a brand new video. And I will see you at the movies.